Dear Grandmother, I'm finally getting my bearings around Tokyo, but I now know what it means to be illiterate. It's hard enough trying to remember the kanji for female when I use the washrooms, but every time I go to flush those high-tech toilets, I'm terrified I'm going to hit the eject button. I've met another Japanese Canadian woman. She's Yonsei like me. Her grandparents spent the internment at Tashme, so you may know them. Does the name Tanabe ring any bells? It's funny. I thought asking what camp your parents were in during the war was something my mom's generation did. But 70 years later and across an ocean, here I am asking it. It's hard to believe as I ride the KO line to work every day that my great-grandfather had a hand in establishing this major railway. I wonder if anything about my body language gives away that I'm 19. Like my direct eye contact, my refusal to slurp noodles. People seriously have a hard time understanding that I don't speak any Japanese. It's odd blending in. At times, I feel invisible, but in a good way. Like, I'm not representing my entire culture with every public act. I'm just me, whoever that is. I came to Japan to find myself, but the opposite is happening. Once, I got lost right outside my apartment. I wandered for over an hour, got into a cab, drove around the corner, I was home. Your little brother, Kanao, what was he, 3 years younger than you? It was almost 80 years ago that he came here to study. He was 20. God, I was so insecure at that age, but at least he grew up with parents that spoke Japanese. Did you guys answer in Japanese or speak to each other in Japanese? Still, it would have been way harder for him. I'm sure in the 1930s, the Japanese people were even more conformist than they are today. Anyone different would have been mistrusted. It boggles my mind to think of Kanao not only studying in his second language, but constantly having to prove himself socially. Do you think anyone knew or cared that his father won a medal fighting for Canada in World War I? By that time, Canada and Japan had been allies for generations. Did he really not know how things were changing? I guess he wouldn't have come if he did. Does that work for ending a letter? Anyway, take care, grandmother. Your granddaughter, Kia.
I thought I missed my molson. But Kid is oishii. Kanao Inouye steps up to the plate. A swing! And a miss. Unfazed, he waves to his clamoring fans. He waits for the windup. A big swing! Strike two. Inouye is looking serious now. He didn't come all the way from campus to strike out. His team is depending on him. His fans believe in him. Sure, he's the best pitcher these Sags have ever had. But can he hit like he can throw? And he knocks it out of the park! A grand slam! The Asagis win the Pacific title for the first time in history. The crowd roars as he runs the bases. Dear sister, living quarters are tight, but Japan is beautiful. Land of the rising sun, mountains everywhere you look. Not big like the Rockies, of course, but still, it reminds me of home. The cherry blossoms are in bloom, but not for much longer. I sat under the tree with my coworkers for our honeymoon. Our section chief played shakuhachi. The idea of a flower viewing party is to experience mono no awai, and But forget the falling blossoms. My eyes are on the opposite girls' bosoms. I may take one of the girls out to see the new chapel picture, Modern Times, or Ozu's first hockey, the only son. What do you think of the Olympic Games being held in Germany this year? Did you side with the boycott movement? By the time Japan hosts the Olympic Games in 1940, I'll be back home in Vancouver, cheering on our Canadian athletes. There are so many people here. 6 million in Tokyo. There are 9 million in all of Canada. Grandfather, Oji-san, says the population has been growing so fast, Japan can hardly feed her people. That's why Japan is expanding her territories to China and elsewhere. The transportation in Tokyo is efficient, but it can't keep up with the population growth. Thanks to a policy of aggressive expansion, Kanao Electric has come to dominate the region, but not just with trains, with bus companies and power generation. Kanao even helped Tokyo recover from the Great Earthquake of 1923 by supplying power to the region. Grandfather took me to a shrine called Yasukuni. It means peaceful nation. It houses the divine souls of those who died defending Japan, going back hundreds of years. Emperor Hirohito pays his respects there every spring and autumn. The emperor is considered a living god, but I wonder how much power he actually has. As soon as I've done a little more exploring, I'll be ready to roll up my sleeves and get my hands dirty. Oji-san hasn't trusted me with any major responsibility yet, but I'll learn fast and work hard. Next thing you know, I'll be running Kanao Electric. And now that I've been rolling out Waseda, the best university in Asia, I'll be reading and writing like a Japanese scholar in no time. No matter how much the family tries to make me feel welcome and comfortable here, I'm like a fish out of water. You know how growing up in Kamloops, we were embarrassed by our parents' strange habits and attitudes? Listening to Dad pretending to agree with loudmouth white people when he knew they were full of shit. Or seeing kids with bologna sandwiches while we try to hide the rice ball and seaweed salad Mom put in our lunches. Here, strangers know me, and my Canadian ways make me the oddball. Something as simple as eating an apple has to be done just so. The skin can't be eaten. You've got to peel it, cut it into tiny little chunks, eat it with a toothpick. It's crude to chew the flesh off the poor, skin and all. Grandfather took me to an Mackay office party, Japanese style, with the board of directors. By the time the food was served, I was starving, and it smelled out of this world, so I dug in. Grandfather gave this look, subtle, but I'll never forget it. I should have waited for someone senior to give the nod. I promised myself I wouldn't screw up like that again. Then last week, a funny thing happened. Maybe funny isn't the right word. My coworkers took me to a sushi joint. They ordered me a fish with the raw slabs of the creature arranged nicely on one side, and there, on my plate, the head and tail, still connected by the spine. Just enough flesh remaining for the little mortal to flop pathetically on my plate. My coworkers were watching for my reaction. I had no choice. I ate the pitiful thing like it was a treat or special just for myself. The whole scene put me off at first, but I showed them. O karada o taisetsu ni kanao.
Dear brother, I just brought in the first vegetables of the season from our little garden. If you were here, I'd make you a salad with your favorite ginger dressing. Glad to hear you've arrived safely and are settling in. Being in Tokyo must be an adventure in itself, but study at Waseda? Father would have been so proud. Is Oji-san grooming you for an executive position at Kanao Electric Tramways?
Although nepotism never hurt anyone.
It must be strange being completely immersed in Japanese. As kids, I never realized how important language was to a person's identity. Now you must appreciate all those years you spent at Japanese school. People must be surprised when you open your mouth and speak perfect English. It's like when Masa and I first moved here to Port Alice. He was working at a pulp and paper mill, and I got a job for a rich English woman as a maid. She couldn't believe how well I spoke English. I was tempted to say hers wasn't half bad either. We just found out the Nisei petition for the vote was rejected in Parliament last week. Can you believe it? The only JCs who can vote are veterans like Dad. It's been 10 years since Dad died. 20 since he served overseas in the Canadian Expeditionary Force. And still, even those of us who were born here cannot vote, much less hold office. Listen to me, Ranton, you think I were running for office? Oh, let me tell you the good news. The Asahi Baseball Club is making history. With their smart brainball strategies, they are outplaying all the other opponents. They've already won the Toronto League Championship, and they are well on their way to winning the Pacific Northwest Championship. That would be a first. But their greatest victory is that they're winning respect for our community. When we go to the theaters, the Happy Gym one is hidden away in the back seats. But when we're on the fields, they're lining up to watch us play. I wish you could see it. Anyway, I'm sure you'll do just fine over there. Hopefully you're not showing off at every opportunity. You may be seen as charming here, but in Japan you'll be seen in a different light. Remember what they say, the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. Dear brother, there's been an addition to the family. Toku, born June 19th. Such a big baby. He's going to be a bruiser for sure. Mother is ecstatic. Her first grandchild. In other family news, Esther decided she was fed up with the poor treatment in Vancouver and moved to Winnipeg. Father would have had a fit about her traveling alone, but I think Mother is secretly proud of her for sharing the same sense of adventure she must have had, sailing all the way to Canada to marry a man she had only seen a picture of. How would you feel about a picture bride from Canada coming over there to marry you? I couldn't imagine it. Couldn't picture you settling down. Though your sisters and I still see you as the baby of the family, you will grow up one day. So we took the baby to Vancouver to see the family. What a joy it was to watch the Asahis play at the Powell Street grounds. They won! They won! They won the Pacific Northwest Championship. Though I must say, while I was happy to be back in Japantown, I couldn't ignore all the resentment there is against Japanese elsewhere. If looks could kill, I'm happy to be back in Port Alice, where it's easier to avoid trouble.
Dear sister, these wretched summer days are too much. The humidity is suffocating me. I can almost go mad with the heat and the inescapable chirp of the semi. Those big, ugly cicadas perch on every tree branch and right by my window just to torment me. It's good to have your letters. Sometimes I miss using English. Thank you for the photograph of Toku, my first nephew. By the time I'm home in Canada, he'll almost be old enough for his first baseball glove. Make sure no one else gives him one before his Uncle Kanao comes back. Since the war broke out in Europe, I've been working on my literacy. I need to know what's going on over there. But I play dumb as much as I can. If I say something that rubs someone the wrong way, I could embarrass grandfather. maybe even lose my job at his company. KO Electric is the biggest game in town. And even though he's the president, they won't take any chances of being shamed by a foreigner like me. What do you know about the Kenpei tie? Japanese Gestapo. People get brought in and the first hint of disloyalty to the imperial cause. Thanks to grandfather's position in parliament, I get a lot of insider news that most people never hear. Luckily, being in my early 20s, I am to be seen and not heard. And I'm happy to let the oldies blabber while I keep my thoughts to myself. Yes, me, little Kanao Inouye, keeping my big mouth shut for a change. Imagine that. What do you think my father would have thought of all this if he were still alive? Fighting for Canada and Mother England and the war to end all wars. What good did it do? Make sure you keep this military medal safe. I want to hang that on my own wall when I'm home again. Place some flowers on his grave for me. At least he's at peace. For once, I'm glad to be the only son. In BC, you and our sisters will be safe until the conflict in Europe blows over. I'm sure your husband won't be foolish enough to harass Ottawa for permission to enlist. We Canadians did our part at Vimy Ridge and Passchendaele. Like the Americans say, this is Europe's battle to fight. Things are pretty tense here. Seems like the whole world's on edge. Military strongmen just do away with politicians against expansion in foreign territories. I'm trying to stay out of politics, but you know me, I like to talk, so I have to be careful what I say. You must be wondering why I haven't written lately. I've been having lung problems. In fact, I was bedridden for a while, recovering from a bad spell. Don't worry, I'm over it now, thank God. But for a time, I didn't know if I was going to make it. Sick or healthy, I must keep my spirit strong. Martha, something happened to me that I didn't tell Oji-san or anyone else. I shouldn't risk writing this to you, but you're the only person I can talk to. A couple months ago, I was at the market talking with some Japanese American. Turns out he's a reporter. Next thing I know, I'm hauled in by a Kenpei tie, being questioned about everything. Where are you from? What are you doing in Japan? Who do you think you are talking to foreign reporters? What'd you tell them? Who am I? What did I do? What did I say? Don't tell Mother. She'll only worry. The reason I didn't tell Oji-san is I don't want to get him involved. It might reflect badly on him. My Japanese countrymen have no respect for Akika. Educated here, returned to Canada. They say I've spent too long with barbaric gaijin. Kamloops? Barbaric? I guess it all depends on the perspective. Their contempt pushes me to try harder to fit in. I'm more of an outsider here than I was in Canada. In BC, I got called Dirty Jack. Here, I'm an impure foreigner. I have to prove my Nihonjin Rashisa, my Japaneseness. One way to do that is to gamon, enduring with patience. Your brother, Kanao.
Dear Kanao, didn't I warn you to behave yourself? You mustn't be so casual in Japan. Please stay out of trouble. I'm worried about your health. Drink lots of green tea. As for the secret police, you've done nothing wrong. Surely they'll leave you alone. Control your temper. Be patient. Business has been good here. Masa and I bought a small house in Steveston. I'm pregnant again, so we thought it was time for a place of our own. Here on the mainland, we could be closer to Mother. Masa also bought a small fishing boat. There's quite a fleet of us. The white people resent us. There have been confrontations, and a few boats have been damaged. The Hakujin say we're taking jobs from them, but they refuse to work for so little. It's bad enough we're banned from licensed professions. But even doing the work they allow us, we get called industrious intruders. We're seeing more and more shops with signs on the windows saying, "No Japs here." I worry there may be more anti-Asian protests. If they want less Japanese fishermen, they should allow us to become lawyers and pharmacists and teachers. Moriko's husband was a pharmacist in Osaka, but here he's a delivery boy for a local grocery store. Remember Masako from Kamloops? She married a university professor from Kyoto. But he can't find work here, so he's writing for a new Nikkei newspaper called The New Canadian. It just started up in Vancouver earlier this year. It's a big source of news that matters to us but doesn't get covered by the Vancouver Sun. At least, not fairly. Dear Kanao, what news are you hearing in Japan about Europe? The constant bombings of London are so dreadful. What's happening to the Jews in Germany might be even worse. Let me speak of other things. Toku has started school. He came home last week crying, saying some of the other children were calling him names. Why do kids have to be so cruel? I want to take them over my knee and spank some sense into them. The teacher said she would give them a talking to. I can just imagine what you would say if you were here.
You worry too much about your son. Toku has Inouye blood. That means he's a tough kid. Let him fight his own battles. Rescuing himself is a skill he needs to learn early.
I remember the time we were walking home from church, and those kids taunted Mom, saying, "There's no room in heaven for chicks." You told them to stop, but Mom just said to ignore them. They mimicked her and pulled at the corners of their eyes, so you made a beeline for the biggest kid and smacked him. Maybe it was a stupid thing to do, but you were protecting our mother. I thought those days were behind us, but with news of the Japanese army invading Vietnam and who knows where else, the Hakujin are paranoid of the yellow peril. Masa jokes that if the Japanese invade, we'll take the kids up the coast in our little boat and hide in the mountains. And Kanao, there's another reason for you to run and hide. I hate to tell you this, but for the first time in years, Asahi was knocked out of the series. No one saw it coming. Oh well. There's always next year. Anyway, there's nothing else new here. Mother had me helping her out at the church picnic last week. I spent hours in the kitchen with Mrs. Honda making egg salad sandwiches. Masa is a dedicated Buddhist and thinks that Mother's church community involvement is quite unnecessary. He wanted to know if they serve egg salad sandwiches in heaven.
みんな、聞け、聞くんだ。日本軍がプールハーブを攻撃した。海軍基地を撃ちのめした。大変なことが起きた。
Kanao, it's unthinkable. Japan has attacked a U.S. naval base in Hawaii. What's going to happen to us? What about you? Kanao, what now? The RCMP gave us 24 hours notice. We had to pack our bags, just 2 for the whole family, and leave our home. We were not allowed to bring the automobile Masa had bought just 2 weeks earlier. Everyone had to be transported en masse. The way we were treated at Hastings Park was beyond belief. Not only were we treated like cattle, our accommodations were actual livestock stalls. We tried to clean the floors, but it just disturbed the maggots. Families huddled together between 2 sheets hung up on either side of their bunks to give the illusion of some privacy. We were lucky. We were placed in a corner stall, so we were less cramped than most others. We waited there many weeks for a train to bring us to the interior. Then they herded us onto a train and dumped us off in this desolate shanty town called Tashme. Almost 3,000 of us here in the wilderness. We're not criminals. I wonder if conditions are any better where other people were sent. I hope you and Oji-san are safe. The rage I heard on the streets of Vancouver, they want revenge. I wish we could get the news on the wireless, but the RCMP confiscated our radios. Even if you were here, you likely would not be with us. Many families have been separated. The men taken to work on road gangs, but so far Masa has been allowed to stay with us. You wouldn't believe how they expect us to live. We don't have houses. These are flimsy tar paper shacks with no ceiling below the roof. There's no running water, no electricity. No one has told us if this is temporary or not. The family in the shack next to ours doesn't have enough room to sleep all their children. So the eldest lives with us. It's a blessing in disguise. Because the warmth of an extra body helps us survive the freezing nights. Our blankets stick to the frost on the walls. Our community is divided. Some of the older men are grumbling that they hope Japan wins the war, while some of the younger men are determined to enlist in the Canadian Army. Brother, I'm heartbroken. I thought I had packed Dad's military medal, but we were given so little time and so little choice in what we could bring. How many times can I check the contents of these little suitcases? I wanted to have it with us as a reminder, as proof that we don't deserve this horrendous treatment. It's as if our past means nothing. But I have bigger things to worry about. Like how I'm going to keep my 4 children alive out here in the wild. As we were being rushed from our home, our neighbors, the Andersons, kindly promised to keep an eye on our house. But I'm worried. When will they let us go home? How long can they keep us out here? Take care, little brother. Martha.
Dear sister, did you hear about the earthquake in Honshu? 1,000 people died. They say that right before the quake hit, the sky lit up with a weird light. I wonder what it means. How's little Toku? Is he becoming a champion ball player? I always imagined him playing for the Asahi one day. I guess that's not to be. So, Canada stole everything we had. Exiling our people is an insult, but this cowardly theft is an outrage. At least your exile keeps you away from the bigots on the coast. You used to say I'll never grow up. I'm nearly 30 now, and I'm starting to get some respect. Guess what? I got married. She's a good wife. From here, in Hong Kong. But now they're transferring me to Singapore.
Sorry about my messy writing. I hurt my hand somehow. I work so hard. Sometimes I don't even notice the damage I do to myself. I need my superiors to know that I'm holding nothing back. I perform my duties faithfully, so that when Japan triumphs, I will know I've done my part. Emperor Hirohito says Japan's situation is now truly grave, but brave kamikaze pilots are volunteering, sacrificing their lives to protect their nation. The weak-willed Americans cannot withstand this warrior spirit. They grow weary. They will go home. Japan will prevail. Martha. I wish you could be here. See me. Know me. Nobody knows me here. This is me, your brother, in prison. Hong Kong. I see you again, Martha. I will not tell you what I've done, what I've seen. You will talk of your garden, baseball, the weather. We will talk of happy times, long past or far future.
never speak of Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the 10,000 bombs that shoot up Tokyo day and night and day and night. The starvation Japan now suffers. The British military tribunal put me on trial as a minor war criminal. I was sentenced. I was sentenced to hang. But war crimes are for foreigners. I was born in Canada, so the conviction didn't stick. I escaped the noose. They're supposed to release me from military custody. But they're taking their time about it. War crimes by foot. Don't they say, all's fair in love and war? There's nothing fair in this victor's justice. They need some hangings for the record. Scapegoats, so they can say these are the ones to blame. Will the Americans pay for their war crimes? Hundreds of thousands. Hiroshima, Nagasaki. What? Japan was asking for it? Bullshit! Western power colonized every part of Asia. Hong Kong, Burma, Indochina, and say they're liberating the poor savages. But when Japan does the same thing, it gets called unprovoked aggression. Now they're charging me with treason in civil court. They couldn't hang me as a Japanese war criminal because I'm Canadian. Because I'm Canadian, they want to hang me as a traitor. But Martha, you're Canadian. Just try to raise your family like anyone else. Look how they treat you. Me? A traitor to them? Our father earned a medal defending Canada, and they exiled his children. Canada is the betrayer. Was I hard on the prisoners? Everyone was hard on the prisoners. Commander Tokunaga's order was to treat all prisoners as ordinary Japanese soldiers. I saw a guard get beaten unconscious for falling asleep on duty. Could I let them see me being soft with the Canadians? I was expendable. They had other interpreters. That was Kika. One wrong move, and get a bayonet in the back. Canadians think they're better. Did you know for POWs, ranks don't count? The officers had proper rations and quarters, while their enlisted men were dying from malnutrition and disease. The officers wouldn't so much as to throw them a biscuit. It was every man for himself. What could they have done? What could anyone have done? What would you have done? Why aren't you here? Martha, my sister, you will never read this letter. It will never get as far as the censors. I'm glad you weren't here. You wouldn't know me. That wasn't me. どうぞお元気で、お姉さん。Take care of yourself, big sister. Yours faithfully,
chilled to the bone. My dearest little brother, you won't be reading this letter, but I can't help writing it to you. We received a telegram this morning confirming our worst fears. You were executed early yesterday. You'll no longer be able to swing from the tire swing Dad made us in the backyard, or sing carols with us on Christmas Eve. What am I saying? Tire swing. You're 30 years old. You would have been 31 come spring. But you are my little brother, who we all wanted to protect from the bullies in school. Our youngest, our only brother. I can't believe all the horrible things they accused you of doing. But if fear and anger drove you to do those things, I can only say I understand that fear and that anger. The government can do anything. They can take away your livelihood, force you from your home, separate you from your family. Our own government has told us you don't belong here. And you, Kanao, to what lengths did you have to go to prove that you were not the enemy? To protect yourself? How can I protect my children? Where can I take them? Years. The government is uprooting our lives again, forcing us to move east or be deported to Japan. Repatriated, they call it. Japan is a foreign country I visited once as a child. We're forbidden from going back to BC, the only home I've ever known. Our community there has been obliterated. Masa thinks we might be better off going east. Ontario, maybe? But he left the ultimate decision to me. How can we stay in a country that has been so unjust? But I'm afraid of what awaits us in Japan. Hunger? Radiation poisoning? How would the rest of Canada be any different than BC? No ocean, no mountains, no Powell Street, no Kimura grocery store, no Japanese language school, no temple. None of the places we could go to hear people speaking the language of our parents and our grandparents. But what would be the same? Ignorance. Contempt, hardship. There is nothing for us east of the coast. I have decided we will go to Japan. Parcel arrived from Steveston. Our old neighbor, Mrs. Anderson, sent something. Kind gesture. What could it be? A scarf from Mrs. Hashimoto's shop? It's gone. There's nothing you can do, Mrs. Anderson. You're always a kind and thoughtful neighbor. That life was taken from us. Kanao. I don't mean to be rude, Mrs. Anderson, but there is nothing you can give us, nothing you can say that will undo the damage, the suffering, the wrong that has been done to our children and our parents. We don't need your parting gift. We can't live here anymore. Our bags are packed. We want nothing from you, Mrs. Anderson. I don't want... Forgive me. Kanao, when you were little, how many times did I tell you to calm down and be patient? Oh, you should have seen the tantrum I just had. You would have laughed and said, "That's my sister." Was this you? Now, helping me make my choice? If I wasn't writing you this letter, I never would have opened that package. Is this your final good deed? To remind us that you are always a decent and caring person? Look, now it's Father's medal. I was so foolish to think that we'd only be gone for a few months. I had asked her to look after the plants. When I learned the government was going to sell your house, I took the liberty of bringing this medal over to our place, and a few other items I was sure you'd hate to lose. I'm sorry I couldn't keep more for you, but I saved what I could, and will keep it for you until we find a way to get it all back in your hands. It's not right what the country has done to you, and I'll do every little thing I can to try to help make things right again. Please do stay in touch, and when you are finally able to settle, wherever that may be, I'll be sure to send along what I have of yours. Some people give you hope. Ontario, then. It won't be easy. We will travel east to Toronto, and along the way we'll still encounter fear. But I know there are people who are willing, who have the courage to overcome that fear. I am still angry. Can I forgive the people that hurt us? And the people who you hurt forgive you? Kanao, I want so badly for you to come home, where I can protect you. But it's too late for that. I feel so helpless. But I cannot show the children. They have enough to worry about on their own. I must teach them to arm themselves with compassion, so that fear and anger do not eat away at their souls. Because they are the next generation that will have to prove how Canadian they are. Take care, my little daughter. Your sister, always. Martha. Dear grandmother, I've been doing some research. I'm sorry to return to this sensitive topic, but I need to know. Your brother, Kanao, turned up in a few history books that say he's responsible for several deaths. But I did the research, and he was never charged with any of the deaths of the POWs. He was charged with aiding the enemy. I don't know what's worse, being executed or being remembered as a war criminal. He was a man in an impossible situation who lashed out at those in an even weaker position than himself. I guess it's impossible to know someone completely. You remember him as your brother. Hong Kong vets know him as a villain. He was both. Kanao's identity was pulled between two countries at war. Is that how it felt to you, Obasan? The more time I spend in Japan, the more I realize how Canadian I am. But how Canadian am I? Who gets to decide that? What I do know is Canada is home. Thank you for making